Hi there, this is Caitlin from my channel Bandy's Books, and I'm here with my weekly update. So it is the first week of June, just finishing up. This week for me was really work focused. I had corporate visits all week. We had people from like the West Coast region and way like up in the food chain visiting the area to prepare for this big conference next week. And my location was one of the locations that was slated for lots of corporate visits. So we had two corporate visits that we were aware of where visitors popped in announced, but we also had several visits that were unannounced. And luckily, it seems like everything went really well. I got some feedback from my regional director today that things went really well and store's doing good. So happy about that. And I'm just getting things organized for the upcoming week. As of tomorrow, I have to go to this conference. I'll be there for 4 days, basically living, sleeping, and breathing my company, which, I'm ambivalent about. Got to do what I got to do, but I don't love the idea of having to stay in hotels with strangers and like do corporate seminars and all that kind of stuff. But I have heard from people who've been to previous conferences that they are a good mix of business and fun. So hopefully it'll be more enjoyable than I'm anticipating. Trying to be optimistic, but it is kind of throwing me out of my routine, and I am kind of somebody that likes to keep my routine. So we'll see how that goes. I do at minimum have a really nice dinner tomorrow night with my team from my district. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's about it for the week, really. Oz went on a backpacking trip over the weekend, so I had a very quiet weekend. I actually ended up working all weekend long in anticipation of these corporate visits. And Oz went and backpacked this trail out in the mountains to a cabin with some friends, had a good time. So reading wise, I have made some good progress on my books. I started 3 different books, finished one of them. Actually started, 4 different books and finished one of them. 3 of them are in various states of progress. So I'll talk about first the book that I finished, and that was The Other Olympians, Fascism, Queerness, and the Making of Modern Sports by Michael Waters. This is a book that is the history of trans athletes and kind of the history of the Olympics as well. So it talks about several famous trans athletes back in like the 1930s and basically how they came to live in their true identities and their struggles with competing in a class that was fit to them biologically, and then feeling like they didn't belong in that class, and then eventually like transitioning into the gender that they felt they were, and then going forward from there. So on the one hand, I was really surprised because it seems like people were way more accepting of it in the 1930s than I anticipated. I expected it to be like a lot more outcry, and I was really actually happy to read that there was a lot more support than I would have anticipated. However, this also talks about the confluence of these, first of all, the rise in women's sports, because at the 1930s, there really wasn't a lot of women's athletics. And so there's still a lot of people that were just skeptical of women's athletics in general because they felt like women would become too masculine or, wandering uterus or whatever crazy nonsense they could use to justify like women not competing in sports. So there was already that to begin with. Then you have these 2 famous athletes that were born biologically female that transitioned to become male, and then that created a whole thing in sports. And then this all led up to the Berlin Olympics, which was hosted right as the Nazis were coming to power in Germany. And there was a lot of concern about the Germans hosting this because of their anti-Jewish rhetoric and basically a big failure on the world's part to allow the Germans to host this Olympics at this time. And this book gets into all of that. It talks about the rise of women's athletics. It talks about these 2 specific athletes that transitioned in the 1930s. And then it talks about this rise of fascism in Germany and how it affected women's athletics, and specifically how it targeted trans athletes and created this like trans panic. The thing that was so interesting about this book for me was that it also seems to mirror a lot of what's been going on in the Olympics in the world today. Like I remember this last Olympics, the boxer Iman Khalif, who everybody was claiming was a man just because she was muscular and has maybe a little less feminine features. And it was very similar to the rhetoric that the Nazis used in the Berlin Olympics to try to disqualify and harass some of the female athletes in the Olympics. It talks about fascism and like the process of fascism rising up into the Olympics, which also oddly parallels a lot going on in the world today. It's just a really timely and interesting book. I think that the time that I'm reading it in has made it a more profound read. I think it would have been profound no matter when I had read it, but I think especially considering some of the things that have been happening lately, I just found this to be a very, very profound nonfiction read. Highly, highly recommend it. It was really well researched, really interesting, well narrated. I didn't want to put it down. Like, I was so interested in what happened to these two athletes, what happened with the Olympics. I could have easily read another couple hundred pages on this subject. And this was an area that I didn't have a lot of information on. I didn't really know the history of trans people in athletics, especially going back into the 1930s. I knew a little bit about the Berlin Olympics and some of the scandals, but I didn't know this specific aspect of the Berlin Olympics. This was just a really fascinating book. Highly recommend it. If you like a good nonfiction, this is definitely worth picking up. So as for books that I started but have not finished yet, so I started The Queer Book of Revelation by Sia Khumalo. This is a book that I actually picked up in South Africa on my trip in March. I went to this cool bookstore, just came across it randomly. They had an entire shelf, like floor to ceiling, of just books by African authors. And so I went and scanned through it to see if I could find some books that looked really cool but hadn't heard of before. And this came across my radar. I am about 43 pages into this. And this is a dystopian science fiction. We have kind of an AI scenario. People have become, they've like bred people to not have feelings. And every once in a while, you have somebody that does pop up that is able to experience feelings and emotions. And so our main character has realized that he has feelings and he's trying to hide that from the people that are governing this world. But that's about as far as I've gotten into it so far. There's a lot of setup in the beginning of the story. So I'm anticipating that the story is going to start picking up from here because I've gotten, I think, through most of the setup now. I read this during my reading sprints last week. And I'm looking forward to reading more of it this week, hopefully. I am excited to see where this goes. I really love a good dystopian, especially love seeing perspectives from different places. So I'm hoping that this is going to be really good. The other book that I started and have not finished yet is The Bones Beneath My Skin by TJ Klune. I'm just a few pages into this one, and I want to say, yeah, I got to like page 15. I read this for the last sprint of my reading sprint this week. But honestly, I was super tired. I probably would have gone for a couple more sprints, but I was on the verge of falling asleep, just exhausted. And so I can't really say much about this book yet because I'm just barely starting it. But I like TJ Klune. I've heard this is a little bit different than some of his other reads, so we'll see how that goes. And then I don't have a book to hold up at the moment, but I did start King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. I have an audio copy of it, so I'm listening to it at the moment, but I have a physical copy on my way from Book of the Month, so I also will have the ability to read some of it. But I'm really liking that one so far. I want to say I'm probably about 30% into it. It's pretty intense, pretty violent, a lot of difficult topics, but this is kind of what I've come to expect from S.A. Cosby's writing. He tends to not shy away from, not necessarily gore. I wouldn't say gore, but like he doesn't shy away from the brutal details. This one definitely seems like it's going to be a little bit more brutal than some of his previous ones. But I like the writing so far. The concept's interesting. So we'll see where it goes. I would say probably I don't think this will be as moving or as good as Razorblade Tears. And I think I liked his last book as well, which I'm blanking on the names at the moment, better than I like this one so far just based on the start. But I think it's a pretty good start. The writing's good as always. So we'll see where that goes. And then for next week, I am hoping to make significant progress on those books that I've just mentioned as far as like the ones in progress. And then I am currently judging this round of the BookTube prize for nonfiction. So I have 6 books that I have to finish by the end of July. So usually the way that I try to approach this is I read 3 books 1 month, 3 books another month. So I will probably sometime this week start one of the first books for the BookTube prize. I'm very excited. So in this round of 6, I actually have read 1 book and 5 of them are new to me. So really excited to read about some new subjects. And then from my bookshelf, I'm hoping to get into Autobiography of Red by Anne Carson. This is a mythological tale of Geryon. And he eventually has a relationship with Heracles. It's told in verse, very literary. So I think this will be a pretty quick read. You can see pages are pretty short since it's all verse. So I'm hoping to get into that at some point. And then I think this week I'd like to try to pick up Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil by John Berendt. This is a nonfiction. My mom said this is one of her absolute favorite books, and I trust my mom's judgment. We have a very similar taste in books, and so I already had this on my TBR this month, but I decided to just bump it up. I've been on a nonfiction kick anyways, and so I feel like this is just, goes right along with that 5-star nonfiction that I've been having. So I'm looking forward to getting into this. As for upcoming videos, so my next priority video is to get up my book of the month predictions for July. I am hopeful that I will have that up. Well, let me rephrase. It will be up this week. My hope was to have it up tomorrow night, and I'm still cautiously optimistic that that will happen. However, it just depends on how the day goes, because I have this weird situation with work where I have to go to this conference and I have a lot to get done prior to that. So if everything goes perfectly, I could have this book of the month prediction video up tomorrow. But if not, it may be Thursday before it gets up. But it will for sure be up this week. I also have an ARC video in progress. I've received a ton of really good ARCs this week. And well, not this week, but the last few months, I should say. And so I made a video just showing what I've received in ARCs, what they're about, because there's some really cool books. And then I have a book organization video. I just redid all my bookshelves, put away a bunch of stuff, got rid of a bunch of stuff. And so I shot a video of that. I also have my BookTube prize ranking video where I rank the last round, the 6 books that I read, how I liked them, and give you little reviews of them. And then I have a book video that I shot while I was in South Africa and Portugal. I came across a couple bookstores, so I made a little video about some book shopping in those countries, and I've been meaning to get that all put together. So all of those ones that I just mentioned, aside from the BookTube, aside from the book of the month predictions, I have actual footage shot. It's just a matter of like getting it finished editing. The ARC video, I'm actually about halfway done with. So hopefully some of these will be coming up this week, and then some will be coming up next week. For live streams, I will be doing reading sprints on Thursday. However, I will not be doing them at my usual time. Normally, I do them at 9 a.m. or 11 a.m., depending on the morning. But this week, because I will be in this conference until Thursday, I believe we're clocking out like around 11 on Thursday morning. So I'm planning to do them at 1 p.m. I do have them scheduled for 1 p.m., but if I get any communication during the conference that it's going to run longer, or I'm not going to be able to leave when I think I am, then I may bump the reading sprints later into the afternoon. So we'll see. Hopefully they'll stay at 1 p.m. And then I'll have a weekly update next Sunday at 6 p.m. I do have to work on Sunday, but I should be home in time for that, so no problem. And then yeah, nothing much this week coming up. Like I said, life is going to revolve around work and this conference for the first 4 days. And then I have a couple days off, and then the weekend shouldn't be so bad. So hopefully I'll be able to catch up a little bit more with YouTube around that time. So I think that's pretty much everything. We talked about what went on this week, what I read, what I have in progress, what I'm hoping to read next week. We talked about upcoming videos and live streams, all that kind of stuff. So I think I'm going to leave it for now. I hope that this was interesting. If you're popping in or out, thank you for stopping in to say hello. And if you feel like leaving a comment, let me know what you're reading right now, or if you have any exciting plans in the upcoming week. I would love to hear from you. Other than that, thanks so much for saying hi, and I'll see you next time.